Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Chatting from Blank on Ethereum. Not sure why people want Ethereum every week, but we'll do it. Personally, not a coin that I currently have my eyes set on, and I've been waiting for a good entry on it for a while now. Ever since sort of the February drop, I tried to take a position on it and took a loss there. So I've been waiting to get a new entry on ETH, and hopefully today we can find a solid setup for us to take. So we're going to do some analysis on it, starting from the higher time frame and working down to the lower time frame, and hopefully by the end of it we have a setup. So let's get into it. Starting on the monthly ETH chart, you know, failing to make sort of fresh all-time high compared to the likes of BTC, right? Kind of unheard of for ETH cycles to have this much difference between ETH and BTC. Obviously, we always see BTC rally and outperform ETH in the early cycle, but you still tend to see ETH rally as well, and ETH eventually make, you know, new highs. We did look at last cycle, right? Obviously, when BTC was making new highs back in like February, so did ETH, right? And then it wasn't until much later on in the cycle we saw that ETH outperformance. And yeah, this time around, you know, a lot of weakness from ETH, and that does come down to the strength in Bitcoin, the dominance in Bitcoin, many cases, right? So when we look at the monthly, to me, there's sort of a clear level right now that ETH needs to get back above for like a strong attempt at moving back higher, and it's kind of this whole region between 2,500 and I think this is about 2,200. This is on the weekly, on the monthly. So as we go on to the weekly, the levels might change slightly, but and then currently bouncing from this sort of prior resistance level. So overall, we have three key areas for ETH here, along with, you know, the key level that just below 4K on the monthly, and like I said, they'll probably change a little bit on the weekly. So we'll go on to the weekly. Now we sort of have dotted out the higher time frame. I mean, something you'll want to point out is like this kind of higher time frame trend for ETH, right? Trend line, meme line, whatever you want to call it, kind of breaking down from that baseline. And you know, if ETH can sort of fake out down here, fake out, reclaim, and sort of start to rally, that can look really good. If we get like a deviation under here, right on the monthly, I think we can look at, you know, seeing an ETH rally back towards the highs at 4K. So going on to the weekly, see what we have. Yeah, pretty nice area here for ETH, right? This whole region. I think this looks like solid support for ETH, and really it's kind of like a must-hold area for Ethereum, right? You can imagine that if ETH does not hold here, like, where is price going to go? It's probably going to, you know, target some of these lows, at least going to go to sub 1,600 in my opinion, and take out this move here under these lows, probably even target this low down to 1,400. So yeah, very important place for ETH to hold now. If BTC goes for that final sweep into like 73K, then we're definitely going to see ETH sweep down into 1,600. And I think having bids under 1,600 to 1,400 seems like a really nice place for maybe like some long-term spot, because then you have to consider, right, what if ETH doesn't hold here? You know, then it's going for like sub 1K. So yeah, overall, I think this is a very important place for ETH to hold for some higher time frame continuation. You know, we've got resistance, support, resistance, support, and now we're retesting that area now again, right? So eyes on this area. We're going to use this area to potentially find a setup from here. You know, sometimes I'm not a massive fan of knife catching, so it could be as simple as looking for ETH to bounce here, reclaim, you know, back above this 2,200 to 2,500 area, and then we can leg up, right? And then we got that reclaim like I just spoke about. You know, on the weekly here, it's kind of this big weekly range above, right? We look at it up from like a range perspective. This is kind of the range on ETH. So if ETH sort of bounces from here, reclaims 2,300, maybe we can look at trading towards sort of like 4k, 3800 to 4k. So yeah, I'm going to be looking for some potentially some triggers here, right, for a long. But you know, if we don't hold here, then we are going to go sub 1600. Now onto the daily. So you might have seen me comment on this a lot, maybe on Twitter, in Discord, whatever. But for me, the ETH daily sell side structure right now is considerably stronger than, you know, the buy side structure. Obviously, we're in a pretty key downtrend for ETH. A key downtrend that really needs shifting before we can consider, you know, a trend reversal on it, right? So if I draw the structure like this, so what we basically have is like support forms, price breaks down, forms a new support, retests that area, breaks down again, right? Price forms support, retests the prior area, breaks down again, price forms support, retests that prior area, breaks down. Price found some support, breaks down, retest that area, support, breaks down, right? Over and over again. And then what you have is just this lower high formation and a solid downtrend, right, from ETH. So, you know, to invalidate the sell side structure, we could do with getting back above that 2300 area, right? One, because we have that, we know we have that weekly and monthly level here. And if the daily starts to shift the structure, maybe we can look at seeing some continuation. But personally, this is not structure I tend to like to bid into. And I think until we sort of get back above 2200 for ETH, this is at risk of forming a new low. So with that in mind, right, if we're going to form a new low, right, the first place I mentioned was somewhere down in under 1600, right, under these lows here, right? But let's say ETH swept and it locked in a bit of a deviation under here. I think this could also be a nice trigger to look for a long. So basically, you know, have some stinkies under 1600. But if we did drop down here and it got front run, like this 1600 area got front run because it's quite overcrowded, let's say, then you could long on a reclaim back above 1900. I'll map this plan out shortly, but for now I'm just sort of brainstorming. So yes, so the plan we can go with right now is that until this sell side structure on ETH sort of starts to shift and we see some daily shifting from this lower high. So what we basically do is start to put in some higher high structure, right, on a higher time frame. Then we can look at considering a long-term spot position. I think there is a good chance that if ETH cannot get on above 2200 to 2300, if ETH cannot flip this region here, if it cannot flip here, then I think it's a risk of new lows. And basically, you want to watch from anywhere from this current low up to 1500 for longs. Sweep into here, reclaim, that's your long position. Sweep above here, reclaim, that's your long position. But right now I see no reason why I would want to knife catch ether, especially with how shaky BTC is looking. If BTC goes back down to 73k, I think that's a trigger for ETH to go down to low 1000s, sub 1500. Alright, so I wrote some annotations on the chart now. This should clear things up. I think it could be quite a confusing episode. So just to clear things up, overall we need this daily sell side structure to shift. In our current case, that would be a flip back above 22 to 2300. If price can break above there, then that's our current sell side structure to break. This would also coincide with option 1. If we reclaimed back above 2300 on the higher time frame, then this likely confirms a big deviation and moves to 3k, right? Overall, right now we're trading at a great higher time frame level, but Bitcoin needs to hold right now around this 80k level for it to give a reaction. If Bitcoin starts to break down, that probably leads us to option 2. Option 2, watch for a sweep under here for fresh longs. Sweep and reclaim 2k can be a fantastic setup. So overall, I think ETH is getting close to a bottom. We are highly relying on BTC as always to decide the market direction, but to keep a close eye on either of these options to play out. Ideally, we look for option 2, the sweep and the reclaim. And if ETH can sweep and then reclaim 2k, big number, $2,000, big whole number, I think it can leg up to 2,500, 3k, and then above. That's it for this week's Charting from Blank episode. Please check out the social below, leave a like if you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.